Hey, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Boss Talk here at the Training Academy in the Command Lab. Before we get started, we're just going to go over some of our normal housekeeping items. Again, if you're a certified chief officer like usual, please make sure you sign in for your COPDI credit on the link on Quick Links to do so. If you have any questions as we go along, we're going to be monitoring the chat. If you're watching live, please feel free to put them in the chat, and we will do our best to get to the questions as they arise. We're going to shoot for 60 to 90 minutes. Episode was advertised as 60. I think we have enough discussion, especially with some of our subject matter experts here to go 90. If you have to dive off, go ahead and do so, but we'll probably end up being around that 90-minute mark before we wrap up today. If you're watching from a station or with a group of people, please just note that in the chat. Just kind of helps let us know who's watching live. And yeah, that's about it. So today's episode on Boss Talk is going to be revolving around parking garage fires. And we're terming it a boss talk because we're specifically going to focus, at least in the beginning, on an incident on St. Elmo Avenue that Company 6 had on C shift. And that involved the auto fire in an underground parking garage. So we're going to focus on that and then kind of segue into some conversation with our subject matter experts about different topics that people seem interested in and that related to some of the challenges that Company 6 experienced in this underground parking garage fire in their area. So I'm going to introduce our panel to talk about the St. Elmo episode from Company 6, Captain Jason Smith, again, 6 C shift, and then Lieutenant Marvin Robinson, also on C shift, Company 6. They were both working there that day and going to discuss their operations. And then we have two of our subject matter experts for some of our other topics that we're going to discuss today. So Chief Ivan Browning, Hazmat Battalion Chief, is going to be here to kind of interface some of the discussion revolving around EV fires and charging stations and underground parking garages and some of the things we're going to implement to try to mitigate those if and when the time comes. And then we have Captain Chris Halleck from the Rockville VFD, who's also a fire protection engineer by trade and has done some great work for us as far as COPDI and other episodes about challenges in the built environment. So discuss some of the intricacies with fire protection systems and parking garages, how they differ from certain types of parking garages to others, ventilation systems and all that. So he'll be able to add some really good insight on those topics. So yeah, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, we'll start talking about the St. Elmo incident first, what you guys experienced there, kind of what you saw, normal initial arriving stuff, and then we'll segue into some of the other topics. So I guess, Lieutenant Robinson, you were the engine officer that day, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so you just want to give us a general overview of where you guys were out and the call went out, time of day, stuff like that, kind of how you your initial arrival?
Yeah, that day we were dispatched for an EMS call, ALS 1 call, and when that call went out, the medic unit got in front of us. They put us in service, and as we were approaching St. Elmo, that's when the box.
So you're right in
went
the same area.
We were right in the same
Gotcha.
area. It was just right place, right time. So when the box came out, we turned on St. Elmo. So I was not dressed or anything. I had Master Firefighter LeKay, Gershbacher, and Firefighter Guyman.
Okay, so your normal
My
crew.
normal crew.
Okay.
My normal crew.
Cool.
They know the buildings. When we approached the building, the Ellis, saw smoke coming out. Had occupants outside.
Could you guys at the media give us the picture of the front of the building without without smoke showing? I guess with the scrolling through here. Okay, so that's pulling it up here. Hang on, stand by. Just to give them the alpha side view and kind of how this building looks from St. Elmo Avenue and where the entrance to the parking garage is located. But they'll pull it up here in a second.
Okay.
But keep going. They'll get it up for you as we go along.
All right. As soon as we came, pulled up, I saw smoke coming out of the garage. The garage door was open. Called out my hydrant, and then I had to figure out as far as a tactic on what we were going to do. So I gave my own scene. Had smoke showing. Didn't see any fire alarms going off at the actual apartment building. Now this Ellis is also connected to a commercial restaurant.
Okay, that's a good kind of a good pictorial there that they have up. They should be bringing onto the stream here in a second, but give people the picture of kind of the magnitude of the building, right? Roughly how large it is. So yeah, that's a good view right there. So do you have I know you're a little bit behind the 8 ball being on another call. Did you have any information
Definitely.
as like where in the parking garage it was or anything when you pulled up, other than just seeing the smoke showing?
No, but as soon as we got out, I got dressed, and there was the owner of the vehicle, and he kind of pointed down and then told us where the vehicle was going to be at. Said
Okay.
it was going to be on the first level.
I got you.
So
And is
that was
this, so
our.
there's a roll-up door. I'm not sure if people can see it or not. Was that up or down at the time?
It was up.
Okay.
It was up, and the smoke was rolling out.
Gotcha. Okay. Cool.
So at that point, we had just made a decision. We are going to stretch a long line and attack the fire, locate the
By
fire.
going
So
through that roll-up door
by
down.
going through that
down the
roll-up
ramp.
door.
Okay.
We also pulled a couple standpipe packs just in case we had to extend it. We've been in this building before, so I wasn't really sure if I wanted to use the standpipe system first as far as getting access from that side. And then when we entered, visibility was non-existent. So
Gotcha.
we
All right.
stretched the line down, used our thermal imager, try to find it. We could hear it. We could hear the sprinkler system had activated.
Okay.
It hadn't extinguished the fire, but it had controlled it.
And they're giving the view kind of down the ramp right now
Yes.
for everybody watching. So as soon as you go through the threshold, you can actually see the roll up in the upper hand corner of the picture, upper left hand corner there. Could you just kind of describe, looking at this picture, kind of to everybody where the auto ended up being that was on fire?
So where that's at, it was probably close to 300 feet.
Okay, basically straight
down.
back, right?
Straight.
Like,
It was a
yeah.
straight shot. It was
Okay.
a straight shot.
And so when you came in there, what did you see on your thermal imager, just so the other people can kind of get a picture of like the other unit officer? Like, were you able to see anything discernible when you first went in, or no?
No.
No. Okay.
No. We were stretching the line and just following the line in, and we're just trying to use the thermal to locate anything.
What
as
was the
far as-
first indication that told you exactly where the fire was? Was it just the sound of the sprinkler? Was that mostly what you were following, or?
It was actually tires going off.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So it was
Gotcha.
the tires.
So sound, though, mostly?
Sound. Yep.
At what point were you able to see it, either through the thermal imager or?
I got pretty close to it.
Yeah.
You know, I got probably 50 feet away from it, and we were able to see it.
So the level of smoke or steam inside that garage, you figure, obviously the clearance in there is probably, 8 feet or so, maybe a little bit less. It's underground parking garage. I don't know what the clearance is, but figure maybe 9 or 10 foot total height between the pipes and stuff that are hanging. How
That's
low
correct.
do you think the smoke was, the floor, would you say, the smoke and steam? Like all the way to the floor?
It was
basically?
all the way to
Yeah.
the floor. You could see your feet, but that was about it.
Gotcha.
And the further we walked in,
Okay.
visibility was non-existent.
Cool. And then how much fire did you guys have when you actually made it to the vehicle?
It was pretty much the engine compartment.
Okay.
It was pretty much the engine
So
compartment.
you flowed water on it there,
We
right?
flowed water
Yeah,
on it,
opened
but
it up.
we put the fire out, pretty fast.
Sprinkler was keeping it in check for the
It was
most part.
keeping it in check, and it was like I said, there was no other cars parked next to it, so the threat as far as auto exposure wasn't there.
All right. So mostly just a smoke event, not a whole lot in the way of volume
That's
of fire,
it.
right?
That's it. So when I got it on scene, we put the fire out. I didn't ask the owner if it was an EV car. So when I got out there, I discovered that it was not. So I radioed to the chief saying that it was not an EV car, and then I was priority as far as thinking about the smoke spreading to the high rise and the commercial.
Gotcha. All right. We're going to touch on a couple more of the engine company things,
Okay.
but talk to Captain Smith real quick about, so you guys arrived in the truck, I'm assuming a little bit behind the engine, just kind of same thing, like what you saw, who you had with you, and what you were thinking about.
Yeah, so I had my normal players as well. I had Master Fireman Fuller was driving the front end, and Fireman Orndorff was tillering. We've talked about this scenario a lot at Company 6. We have a lot of these underground garages with high rises on top of them, and they are nightmare fuel for us. Really worrisome for me. So on the way to the call, we didn't know where this vehicle was located. I knew it was, I didn't know how many stories below grade it was, but I knew it was going to be numerous. So our game plan for this, and we have slings that firefighter Gershbacher made up for additional cylinders that we bring with us. So
Is that for
high-rise
high-rise?
fires
Okay,
and
yeah.
below-grade park garage fires, we're bringing extra cylinders with us, knowing how big some of these garages can be. So that was our plan initially, and then Marvin went on scene and had a fire on that top floor. So we chose not to bring the extra cylinders. We didn't think we were going to need that. You guys touched on it. This was not a fire event. This was 100% a smoke event. So I knew going into it, this was going to be, we have to search this level. We have to search this garage. That was our game plan. That's the focus that we had going into it. There's not a lot of truck work to do on a vehicle fire, but searching it, absolutely. All things considered, this was probably the best location it could have been, right? As we pulled up, I was watching Marvin and his crew stretching a long line into the garage door, which is something we can talk about, right? Should we attack all of these garage fires, underground garage fires, from the garage door, or should we try and find a stairwell and attack it from there, right? Knowing that that stairwell is how people are going to be getting out of a garage. And I don't know what the right answer is. Maybe it's all situation dependent. But for this one, because it was on the first floor, they pulled a long line, very quickly extinguished the fire. I think Chief First was the battalion chief that was on scene first, Battalion 1. I think
Yes.
Chief Gettig was on a river call. He made me fire attack, something that I think I should have done earlier. I mentioned a number of times that we needed to search this whole garage, but I didn't release units, right? So Chief First had me as fire attack with the engine company, I think Second Due Engine, and Tower 51. I searched that whole first floor of the garage, and I used my thermal imager to do that, which is an unnerving feeling, searching that thing by yourself with just a thermal imager. I mean, every 5 or 10 feet I walked, I would turn around and make sure I kept my bearings as to where I was going. Following that fire, I ended up using our P card and purchased more search bags for the engine and the truck for these calls specifically. It'd be very easy to get turned around if I didn't have that thermal imager. But the other crews were kind of standing there, right? Like, there's not a lot of work for a truck crew to do. Tower 51 was there, 20's engine was there, and everybody was kind of standing without a job to do. So in retrospect, I should have released those units back to command so he could have redeployed them. They asked what floor we were on in the garage, and I said the top floor. I found a stairwell, and the door on the stairwell said go. Like, what does
Can
this
you guys
mean?
pull up the picture of that stairwell number that we had in the media?
So the top floor of this stairwell, which I have not seen before, was G0.
G0.
Yeah, so that's an example they have up now of kind of how those particular, the floors in that particular building are labeled, but I can easily see
Yeah,
that
so,
being
so it just
thrown
said
off.
go on the door. Like, what does this mean? And then I went into the stairwell. That particular garage goes from G0 down to G5. I knew search was going to be a big deal. We had to do that. So I dropped down a couple of levels, and on every level below, all the way down to the bottom, G5 was zero visibility, smoke, floor to ceiling. So my concern was, you got Meemaw getting her groceries out of her car. This fire happened. She's overcome with smoke. How do we clear effectively? How do we clear the entirety of a parking garage that's underground with zero visibility? And I don't think that that's something that either we have trained or thought a lot about, and I think that we should. Something else that happened on this, as they're pulling their line in, our crews have gone in, we're searching that first floor. A vehicle drove out of the garage, ran over the hand line, very easily could have run over one of us. They wanted to get out of the smoke too, I get that, but it's just something I hadn't thought about until it happened. This car just came out of nowhere, ran over the hand line and left the garage, which is another consideration I think people should keep in the back of their minds.
Yeah, so I think a lot of this episode, people are probably, well, it wasn't a major fire, right? Why? It's a super important topic, though, because especially you guys have so many of these hazards in your first due area, right? It's only a matter of time before we run one again. Most people have some sort of parking structure in their first due, right? Whether it be in a massive single-family residence in Potomac, right? We have underground parking garages underneath some of them, whether it's in downtown Bethesda, where it's freestanding parking garages, and Glenmont area, wherever in the county, right? You have some kind of parking structure, and a lot of these hazards are present in all of them. So that's why, we're doing this episode, because not just your incident that it was super, I guess, crazy, right? It wasn't anything
It was a smoke
in
event,
magnitude,
yeah.
but it's a super important topic because there are all these hazards and considerations that I think we need to talk about.
And I'm sure they're all over the county. We have parking garages that are full city blocks with numerous high-rises on top of them with 4 or 5 different entrances to these garages. This one, the guy was waiting for Marvin out front and said, "It's my car. It's on the first floor. It's right there," and pointed to it. That's easy. But you have somebody calls it in, we got smoke in a garage, and you don't know where in that garage the car is. How long is it going to take you to even find where that vehicle is versus finding the stairwell that's closest to it to hook up, to put water on the fire, and then searching that entirety of that structure is.
And we know that's a common theme because I solicited people may or may not know, lieutenants and captains, just if they had anything that they really wanted us to cover in this episode or hazards and parking garages in their area. And that was a common theme that more than one person brought up. In addition to you guys, is actually the difficulty of finding the incident location in some of these places, even in what we would consider a quote open air parking garage, right? How poor visibility can get quickly. And Chris will talk about the ventilation systems and everything involved in these underground parking garages and efficacy of them, whether they're working or not. But the steam expansion, just the amount of smoke produced and all that, how difficult it is, needing to use the thermal imager and all that. So, definitely a big
Matt,
topic.
Real quick, did you all just get lucky that the roll-up was open? Or is
Yeah,
it open during normal business hours, during the day? Like,
Lucky.
how did you know
Lucky.
it wasn't going to come back down? Like,
Luck.
We didn't. Luck. And it's that, I don't know if you can pull that picture up. That roll-up door is tall, really tall. So it's, I mean, you could put, pliers, vice grips on the track and hope that stops this roll-up door. Or you could stick a ladder up there or a tool or something. But, I mean, that thing is up there. And it just stayed open the whole time. We got lucky. I don't know if that's part of the building systems. The sprinkler activates in the garage. The doors automatically go up. I don't know.
Chris, would that be something that would be integrated in building systems, depending?
It very well could be if it's part of the ventilation system of the garage, but not necessarily.
Probably because it relies,
that
the
has to,
ventilation
yeah.
system requires some kind of makeup air, right, where
Correct,
they're
yeah.
getting from that opening. So, okay, depending
So
on.
this building obviously is pretty new. Has a ventilation system built into it that is supposed to activate with sprinkler activation and all that stuff. George Ketterman, who came on truck 16 for this call, master HVAC tech, knows all about this stuff. He went through because he was wondering why none of the fans were working, and he went, every level was going down, and the fuses to all of the fans had been removed. So the fans just weren't operational at all. Brand new building, and the fuses were removed. So we had nothing from the building system to help us remove any of that smoke.
And we were talking about a little bit before, Chris. You said that's a somewhat common thing that you've seen for one reason or another. Why would you see that typically?
I think the greatest reason is because these ventilation systems are part of the mechanical code. They're really in place to prevent a buildup of carbon monoxide in the parking garages just from vehicles idling and driving through the garage. It's really just a day-to-day sort of ventilation system. In the context of a fire event, yeah, they can help relieve smoke, but it's not really what they're specifically designed to do. So because of that, when you have your sprinkler and fire alarm systems tested and maintained, these are not considered a life safety system.
Okay.
And they're not tested and maintained and enforced in the same way. And that's why I've seen plenty as well, too, in Rockville where the fans, maybe 50%, 25% of them are actually working. It's because of a lack of enforcement, really.
Cool, thank you. So before we want to go too much further into the smoke removal aspect, I'll talk a little bit more about this garage door. Is a really good point. All right, we think about it, residential structures, right? We mentioned the vice grips and the channels, the tracks of the door, right? We know different techniques that can hook up there, make sure those don't come down, but definitely a consideration when you're stretching through a high-speed roll-up door like this, right, with a hand line, right? Could that thing come down? How's that going to impact fire flow? Stuff like that. And also, so it all kind of goes back to the decision. We'll go back to you a little bit, Marvin, about stretching a pre-connect and how you made that decision, where the stairwells were in this particular building and how they're located, interface with the building. So if the guys could show that picture of the stairwell. I think it's from the main lobby area going into the stairwell that then serves that parking garage. That's a good one. Yeah, right there. You guys can pull that up. Just so everybody has a picture, right? The stairwell in this parking garage, you just describe how it is in relation to the building since you guys were there. It's basically part of the building itself, right? It's not unique to the parking garage. It serves the floors on the building and then down to the parking levels, correct?
Yeah, that stairwell right there is a series of hallways to get to the garage.
Okay.
So, I think it was paramedic engine 707. They went through that way just to check, but it was not compromised at all. And there's another stairwell that we saw closer to the vehicle, which is like a center stairwell that we were able to check you was able to check all.
And
the
that's where the
floors.
standpipe risers are located
That's where
for this
yeah.
garage, correct? Inside that
Exactly.
stairwell. So when we talk about door control and potentially
Right.
compromising those stairwells, which do interface with the main portion of the building, a consideration probably for, and not saying always or never, right, but a potential consideration for not using the riser in this case is, at least to a certain degree, you're going to have to compromise that stairwell
Correct.
that then interfaces with the building to stretch out of that stairwell into the garage.
Yeah, my first thought was we need to get this fire out quick. As far as time, we knew it was a center stairwell, but actually getting to that center stairwell, low visibility, it was going to be tough. So now we're going to walk around with standpipe packs with nothing to connect, and low
Right.
visibility. So
Yeah.
we figured we're going to stretch a long line, attack the fire, and if we needed to extend, then we have it.
And I think we'll talk a little bit more about like tactics and stretching lines. We talk about all types of parking garages a little bit after this, but yeah, that's just I think a couple good points related to why you made that decision in this
Yeah.
case, beyond just knowing like, hey, we're relatively close to it and we can access it pretty easily through this door. So back to the incident, I guess, we're kind of the fire's out. How many sprinkler heads do you guys have active in this case?
I believe it was just one.
Just the one, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so, but held it to the vehicle of origin. So smoke removal search and smoke removal became the big thing. Again, we'll talk more about potential search techniques and thoughts for people to have. So smoke removal, can you guys just go through, I guess, more of a truck operation, right, at this point? And everybody really was kind of involved in it, but what techniques what did you guys choose to do? Were they effective or not as far as ventilating the smoke?
Yeah, I think that the reason that this went to a task force was because we needed more fans. Right? None of the building fans in the garage were working, so we had to bring all of the fans with us. So we had every fan off of every truck that came on every level of that garage. And we were just trying to use that garage door, keep everything else closed, right? Save the building, and just take some time and blow that smoke out of the garage door. It did work. I mean, there's some pictures you can see with smoke coming out, and it looked like that for quite a
it's
long
Slow
time.
process.
I mean, it was a lot of smoke that was produced from
Yeah,
one
they'll pull
little
that
car
picture
fire.
back up. Yeah, right there.
It was working, and then at some point, the decision was made. This is, I guess, taking too long. We're going to assign a chief officer as the ventilation group supervisor, and they decided we're going to try and ventilate this smoke through the residential building, which maybe wasn't the best option because now we've compromised this residential structure that's 24 stories tall that we now have to clear every level of that and make sure we're not filling any of those
Yeah.
hallways up with smoke.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about, right, having a ventilation stairwell in certain cases, right, depending on the situation, right, maybe using a roof hatch, maybe using that as an exhaust. So, yeah, obviously positives and negatives to anything we can do. I guess the challenge in this case was, we had the underground parking garage and we have the exhaust at that main garage door. Well, where's our inlet, right? Where are we forcing air in? Where are we exhausting it? Like, there's just not a whole lot of options, right? We're kind of at a dead end all the way down the bottom. How are we getting that fresh air in behind us if we're using positive pressure to force it out the exhaust?
So I think ultimately what worked for this was George Ketterman. So he went through, he found all these fans with the fuses unplugged, with the louvers shut, and he opened the louvers that allowed the air to move and plugged these fuses back in and got these fans operational. We would have been
That's
there
huge.
for quite a while longer had he not done that. So it's nice having people that know what they're doing
Yeah, for sure.
on the call. Yeah.
So I guess kind of related to that, and obviously it was a time-consuming process. As far as like building pressurization, I guess is a question for Chris, right? With these stairwells, would you typically see stairwell pressurization in this scenario, right? As far as like in these stairwells, would we expect to see that? I mean, even I guess irrespective of the fact that there's a parking garage there, like would we expect to have some kind of working stairwell pressurization in those stairwells that serve the garage if it's connected to the building, or?
Yes, absolutely, but only for more modern buildings. We have plenty of buildings in the county, plenty of existing high-rise buildings in the county that don't have pressurized stairways, and we're well familiar with that. But for this specific instance, this is a newer high-rise building. The parking garage is considered part of that high-rise building, and it's subject to the same requirements to require stairway pressurization in that stair.
Okay, cool. So we can expect that to at least help us keep the stairwell clear, hopefully, if we have to
Yeah,
open a door to stretch out of.
and I think that it sounds like it afforded a lot of benefit to this incident in preventing smoke migration into the stairway.
Cool. Anything else specific to as far as like the smoke removal that you have, positive or negative, or?
I mean, it's really time consuming using these electric fans that we have now. I mean, they're nice because they're portable and they're light, but you're not getting the CFMs out of them that some of the older combustion fans would produce. It would be nice, like if we had a truck like Loudoun County
Yeah.
Or we had an airboat again.
Right. So yeah, I guess so that brings up like another point that people brought up and something that we wanted to touch on. So somebody in the chat actually brought it up too. I'm asking about were the mobile ventilation assets used, or was there any consideration to using them? On this specific incident, I don't believe there was. So we've run other incidents recently where there have been. We had the big flooding incident in Wheaton there on Georgia Avenue, whatever the name of that building is, and the address right there, like Reedy, I forget. But they had that. Yeah, that basically the switchgear room underneath the parking garage there flooded out, and to pump that out, they had to bring in big trailer mounted diesel pumps, basically diesel trash pumps to pump all this water out, however many tens of thousands of gallons out of this room. During the course of that, there was a concern with CO buildup from running these combustion engines in the parking garage underneath this occupied apartment building. So they brought in one of the mobile, I think it was 53s, has a mobile ventilation unit. They brought in to do that. 11700 Old Columbia Pike. We had a fire in off the parking garage in a storage room a couple months ago. I think Anne Arundel brought the Ram fan down, so Anne Arundel's got an asset. And then you mentioned Loudoun Counties. If nobody's seen that, that's another mutual aid resource that is available that we used on the Carter Rock fire. Theirs is a true mobile ventilation unit meant to, or they got it with the purpose of these data centers, very, very large warehouse-style buildings, a true truck-mounted, and I don't even know how many CFM that fan is. It's probably hundreds of thousands,
ginormous.
tens of thousands.
They also have the ability to raise it up to like 3 stories, so they can actually get some height out of it, and also have the other, I'll say, portable fans on it. They're bigger fans, but they can set up, again, for the data center, but if you have multiple entry points that you want to set up at a high-rise or a parking garage that may have a couple exits,
Yeah.
it's definitely an option.
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely a topic we wanted to bring up, is that being considered, especially for the chief officers, right? You're considering additional resources like those mobile ventilation units. Again, in this case, I think it would have been difficult to get it to where we needed it, especially since we were trying to exhaust, at least initially, right? I guess you can come up with a different plan depending on the orientation and nature of the parking garage, whether it's above ground, below ground, whatever, enclosed, semi-enclosed, where to place that fan, because you got to remember, you can't just start blowing air, into the main garage door there, because it's convenient if you have no place to exhaust the smoke, right? If it's just going to exhaust it into the stairwells then, or whatever else, you just got to be cognizant of where you're placing them. But to my knowledge, it wasn't specifically. It might have been considered. I don't think it was ever requested on this event. So, cool. Let me just kind of go through. Okay, yeah, all the questions and comments as of right now are really directed at toward the mobile ventilation stuff. So, all right. Anything else? I guess Marvin, one at a time. Things that now, obviously in retrospect, run this incident again, whether it be in this parking garage or another one. It's specific to, like, this below ground parking garage is a very similar circumstance. If you had to do it again, anything you would consider or do differently as far as like engine company operations?
Just taking your time, figuring out where the fire's at, which, like to say, we lucked up with this one. It was right there on the first level. But just thinking about if it was down on the three stories below, how am I going to do it? Then I probably would take the stairwell, maybe use the standpipe packs to be able to extend that line. But other than that, I think we did a good job with what we had. But it's a lot to consider.
And there's so many variables.
There's so many variables with this one. I mean, we've always talked at the station, because we get buildings every day.
Every day
is something's going up. So something's going up, and these parking garages are going down. So we talk about EV cars a lot, and the threat, and what are we going to do, and our plan, and it's kind of tough to try to figure out your tactics. If it's 4 stories below, you can't find it, low visibility. But with this one, it was easy.
Yeah, I think the biggest point is taking your time, right? And you can't plan for every specific scenario and every specific environment, right? But if we know about what to expect as far as fire protection features, where the stairwells are located,
Right.
where the entry and exit points are, if you take your time, you can kind of make those decisions. But I think talking about it, pre-planning, looking at it, right, talking about it with your crews, right. Please include the EMS units, right? They're part of your station. That person will be riding the suppression piece the next shift, right? Get out there, look at the buildings, talk about it, and make sure when we're talking about it, everybody's understanding, right, what they're looking at, right? When you're looking at a stairwell, right? In this case, enclosed stairwell, it's probably going to be clean because it's probably pressurized. It's part of the building. This below ground parking garage, if we have to hook up here, it's going to be a good environment. Whereas
Right.
when we go to that 8-story above ground open air parking garage with a dry standpipe system, might be a completely different ballgame. And as an officer, I might not be considering it, but making sure the new Fire 2 is riding the back of the engine understands why, right, and what those differences are. So definitely, educating yourselves is important, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Was there any FTC decisions you had to make since you were right there? Like, are there multiple FTCs for that
No.
building?
No, just a single FDC right on side Alpha.
Because we do find some that you're supplying
Yeah.
either the garage or the building, right? So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got some of the older buildings in our area that have kind of retrofitted and have, like you said, 2 separate ones. So you got to make sure that you hit the right one. But in this case, we didn't.
Yeah.
And they're never labeled correctly.
Oh, no.
And no building engineer knows which one charges which system.
Yeah.
Kind of the rule of thumb is if the FTC is connected to the building, that is the building systems. And if it's on a pedestal, that's usually a garage, but that's not foolproof either, right? So maybe you're just going to be charging both systems and hoping for the best.
Yeah, I think Chris will touch on, he's got a picture of a parking garage standpipe connection, and talk a little bit about that, I think, when we get into more of the systems discussions. Anything from a truck company perspective that I know, aside from the prioritizing, or at least having other units help prioritize in the search, anything else that you have from that truck?
Yeah, the thermal imager was invaluable, searching that thing. I wish we could have a thermal imager on every riding position. We can't, so I went out and purchased search rope specifically for these. It'd be so easy to get turned around inside of here, but to clear these garages, I think you're going to have to use a thermal imager before we remove all the smoke. You're gonna have to use it, and it worked very well on this call. I would say another big takeaway was that car driving out of the garage, right? So when we're entering this garage to go find this fire, the last thing you're thinking is there's going to be a car coming right up to hit me. So hug a wall as you're advancing that hose line in. Maybe that'll buy you some protection, but don't go right down the middle of that opening, because if a car is coming out, they're not going to see you until it's too late. Those are the big ones for me.
Cool. All right. Well, that was right about a half hour as far as discussion on that specific incident. It was kind of where I thought I would be. But again, a lot of those topics I think are going to come up as we continue to talk about generalizations as far as vehicle fires and other fires and parking structures. So they have that picture pulled up of the FDCs. So I think first I want to talk about some of the engine company tactics, right, related to fires and parking structures, and how we're putting water on the fire and how those are interfacing with the building suppression systems and standpipe systems specifically. So, Chris, you want to talk a little bit about this picture, where it came from, and what we can gain from it?
Yeah, sure. This is the fire department connection for 20 Maryland Avenue. It has infamously been mislabeled since they put it up as 21 Maryland Avenue, but people at 3 know that this is certainly for 20 Maryland Avenue. 21 is the library across the street. This is the mixed-use residential mid-rise building. It had what used to be the CVS, now vacant, on the bottom floor. Everyone knows it's right across from Station 3. And it's a mid-rise residential, but then there's also kind of an enveloped donut-style open parking garage in the middle of it, also known as parking garage A. We had an incident here sometime last year involving a Tesla that was parked on the 4th floor, I believe. The fire actually did not involve the battery itself. It was just in the trunk of the
You
Tesla.
guys have the picture of the vehicle?
Luckily.
Yeah. It's worth noting that I believe that this parking garage is currently used as overflow parking for the Tesla maintenance shop off Stone Street. So lots of Teslas are in this building. Yeah, it's a great photo showing it. So clearly we had a fire incident here, but fortunately did not involve the battery. You can see the bottom of the vehicle is pretty much untouched. And following this incident, I had a lot of questions about the sprinkler and the standpipe system of this garage, following some anecdotes from the engine company. First of which was when they opened the standpipe system, they said it took a long time to receive water. Namely, that's because it was a dry standpipe system. So you're getting a lot of air from the first time you open that fire hose valve on the standpipe. You're just getting air until water catches up. So you have to keep that nozzle open to allow the air to bleed out until you get your water. So you just have to be patient. But you also need to be prepared for that and know hey, maybe I shouldn't be right in front of this vehicle expecting water to come out of this nozzle. When I feel like my line is charged, right, you feel like the line becomes pressurized, but it's really just air, and you're opening up that nozzle and nothing's coming out. Another thing that came out of this was people asking why only some parts of the garage were sprinklered and others not. When this building was built, the building code and the life safety code only required, pretty much only required sprinkler systems in enclosed parking garages. The above grade levels of this parking garage are mostly open with exception to the first floor. And that's where the CVS drive-through is as well. When you enter parking garage A on the street level, it's enclosed. So you see the sprinkler system goes up about one, maybe 3/4 of a floor until level 2, and then you start to see the transition to the unsprinklered open part of the parking garage. This is a great photo on the screen here showing where that sprinkler system actually terminates. So of course this incident involving this Tesla was on the 4th floor, well above this transition area, and there's no sprinkler system here. So it was a uncontrolled fire, right? There's no sprinkler system, and you're using a dry standpipe system where water delivery might be a little bit delayed. So both of these things can be a little unnerving to the first arriving engine officer, wondering why they're unable to initiate suppression, right? Not a feel-good thing when you feel like your line is charged but no water's coming out. But if you recognize and you know from your building walkthroughs or know how to look for what is a dry standpipe system, you should be able to expect that. And maybe advise the lineman, say, hey, you're going to have to keep that thing open for a little while. Let's stand back while you let the air bleed out.
So I think that's a good segue into talking about the tactics, right, for the first 2 engine officers specifically as far as how we're going to get water on these fires. So can you guys put that picture up on the screen right there? It's just, I think it's showing the dry pipe valve, right? Chris, you want to highlight that real quick? Just talk about what the valve looks like and why you highlighted this picture.
Yeah, so I think this is actually the dry valve for the combination sprinkler and dry standpipe riser, because this system is all a combination system, meaning that the standpipes also feed the sprinkler systems where the sprinkler system is. Of course, we recognize that there's not a sprinkler system on every level in this building, and so the remainder of the building is just protected by the dry standpipe system. It's important to note that this is not a high-rise building, so an automatic standpipe system is not required. And I feel like this is the most difficult differentiation for our unit officers to make, where we see a standpipe system that's connected to the fire pump, we immediately assume it's an automatic standpipe system. But that's not the case, especially not the case for mid-rise buildings where the fire pump is really there for the automatic sprinkler system. But automatic standpipe systems are only required in high-rise buildings. So these mid-rise buildings with the combination risers, you can't expect to have the minimum flow out of that standpipe system just from the fire pump itself. You'll get water, but you might not get enough. And you might recognize that as soon as you open up your hand line and you might have a 250, 265 GPM nozzle, and you're not getting the pressure you need because that fire pump was not sized to pump that or flow that. That fire pump was sized for the minimum sprinkler system demand, not necessarily one hand line or multiple hand lines flowing off of a standpipe. So that being said, right, that makes it ever so more important that we actually pump the connections and pressurize the connections when we're using the standpipe system, because it's no guarantee that that fire pump, that automatic delivery is actually going to meet your flow demand for your standpipe operations.
Yeah, and so I think another good point about these dry systems, right, depending on where it is, if it's a freestanding parking garage, right, not all dry systems are equal, right? So you mentioned that this is a combination sprinkler standpipe dry valve, which has air, right? So it's a monitored system, right? It has air on it, so that way if there's some kind of failure, right, the high-low air, they'll at least get a supervisor in the fire alarm panel. They should know somebody to come out, fix whatever's going on, right? Whether it could just be an open riser valve, but it could be some kind of compromise in the piping or whatever. We get a standalone parking garage. We could literally just have a set of FDCs and a pipe, basically, right? That's at a completely non-monitored system, which is really at the mercy of whoever maintains that building the last time it was inspected and everything like that, as far as the integrity of the actual standpipe system. So, yeah, you may have a delay in water if it's a well-maintained system, then get water with adequate pressure if you're pumping the connections, or you might never get it if you're going to one of these standalone parking garages and somebody went up every stairwell and opened up every riser valve wide open. You might be waiting for quite a long time, or never, right, to get water into that line. So, what decision are you going to make, right, at which garage, and how are we going to put that first line in service? Personally, I was always on the team of we are always stretching a long line or we're going to use our own hose, right? We're going to stretch a long line up the stairwell, or we're going to drop a standpipe pack out, have the engine driver connect it, and use our own hose. We're still going to support the connections, but that's not going to be our primary attack line. Is not going to come that direction because of the potential pitfalls of utilizing some of these systems. So you guys want to share that video clip real quick? So we have a video clip. There was a fire in downtown Silver Spring in a parking garage. It's, by all accounts, an open-air parking garage, right? But it gives you a good picture or a good idea of how much smoke was in that parking garage. On the other side of it, so these guys came up in a tenable location, this engine company, and they opted, I don't know where the first line came from, but this backup line was basically being stretched by dropping the hand line down off the side of the garage and having the engine driver connect it. So there's another alternate means to get water to the auto. That's cool. That's good, guys. You can cut that again. I just want to give people a picture of kind of how they were doing that operation. You guys have anything else as far as considerations, what like things you guys talk about with stretching lines and anything you can offer from experiences?
Yeah, I think the distinction you made about manual dry standpipe systems that we prominently see in most freestanding open parking garages, because again, historically the code did not require those parking garages to be sprinklered, so there's no automatic water supply already at the site because there's no sprinkler system to supply. So they just designed, like you said, basically an FDC and a dry pipe system. There's no water, there's no pressure on the system until we put it in there. And for unmonitored or unsupervised dry systems, you could have every valve, just like at the academy, right? You could go there to that dry standpipe system in the high rise, and every valve could already be open in the stairwell because someone forgot to close it. And what does that do to our operations? Does that completely take the standpipe out of service? Are we going to try to fuss and track down every valve, close it up so we can get the pressure we need, or are we just going to default to long lines? I think these considerations are especially true in these open parking garages, above grade open parking garages that have manual dry systems.
Yeah. Moral of the story is just have a plan, practice it. Right?
I think it brings to light also the leader line operation, right? Because if you would have had numerous cars off, do you need two lines down there, right? So having that ability there to run packs off that, I know back in the day at 6, we used to talk about that, right? Like just, yeah, it's about our water, but if we get overrun before somebody else can get down there and get water, you just got to take that into account too. So there's a couple different trains of thought that go with it. Just make sure you have the volume of water and the mobility to get numerous vehicles controlled.
So I think our game plan, 5 stories above or 5 stories below, we're taking a long line, which is a 400-foot line off of our engine company with our 2 bundle packs. So we have 600 feet of hose. And that's our game plan. We can always call an audible depending on positioning or whatever else. But that's our game plan. I think in regard to the leader line operation, I'm going to let that be more of a second or third due engine company's game plan because I want to get water onto that fire as quick as possible in hopes of keeping it contained to that single vehicle or second vehicle or whatever. I think you're absolutely right. You have a bunch of these vehicles off, you're going to need more water. But maybe that first line, getting that line in place can at least keep it in check until backup companies can build that out.
Yeah, for sure.
As much as we want to take our time, I mean, we do need to get water on these fires quickly because we can have, I mean, these cars in these parking garages are parked inches from each other, right?
Yes.
So we can have a major fire problem that could lead to a major structural integrity problem too. We all know, we've seen parking garage collapses, right? We know it's, these prefab concrete structures, they're susceptible to damage under extreme heat, and get a couple cars going, even in a quote open air parking garage, is going to generate extreme amounts of heat and can lead to structural damage also. So we want to do the best we can to get water on those fires quickly to prevent the spread, obviously help with the property loss side of it. So cool. A bunch of other subtopics. Any of this, Chris, you got anything else on suppression systems or anything for right now? Okay. Let's talk a little bit about EVs because that came up a lot. And as far as like when I polled people and stuff they wanted to hear about. So even in this incident that they had right in St. Elmo, in that instance, you said the chargers were basically right next to, did not involve an EV, but
No.
the parking spaces and
Not
chargers
far.
for those were right next to it, so relatively close to the entrance. But you guys also have some, you said that they're multiple stories below grade, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, we get an EV on fire either at a charging station or just in a parking space, particularly in these below-ground parking garages. People wanted to know, well, what are we doing as far as, okay, we know that copious amounts of water will help, the thermal runaway control it, but now what do we do once the fire's knocked down? Are we moving these cars? And we know the smoke's extremely toxic. Are we going to try to get them out of the garage? Are we going to leave them in place? So Chief Browning, do you have any just general guidance or stuff that you've thought about as far as relating to EVs underground?
Yeah, so it's come up a lot. I think the first one we saw, again, was Sevens area at the Amazon Fresh, a couple floors below, a couple charging stations, and they have an energy storage system there. So it's not just about the EV, it's about what's powering it. We had a pre-talk before hopping on here. There's public utility that's supplying the charger sometimes, but then there's also energy storage. So there's a whole bunch of hazards that go with it when you look at it. The number one thing is put the fire out, right? So you guys have talked about, you have a plan for, at least in your minds, of how you're going to locate a vehicle fire in a garage, right? The EV doesn't change that. All those things still happen. Put the fire out. When you extinguish the fire, it gives you a second to kind of figure out what's going on. Yeah, you're still going to have a bunch of smoke, a bunch of nasty smoke that you have to account for. We talk about the code side of things, right? Like a lot of our garages in Montgomery County are pre-best practice codes that are out there or becoming something that the county's following now, right? So the EV brings a lot more heat when it is fully involved, right? Battery pack or not. So there's the structural damage part of it. That's also extra weight. We saw the FDNY responded to a parking garage collapse that they think was attributed. It's an old garage that had a bunch of EVs in it now, right? So there's this whole extra hazards that go along with it. Captain Smith and I, we were talking about just if it's hooked into a charger, right? Again, put the fire out. You're not going to get fried by any electricity. That hasn't been proven anywhere. All the emergency response guides for the electric vehicles, put them out. Battery electric vehicles, hybrid electric vehicles, put them out with water. I would say if the plug is not damaged, you are more than okay to disconnect it from the system if it'll come out, and it kind of just takes that piece out of it. Chris was talking earlier that there are fail-safes built in to automatically shut down whatever is powering those things. But then you have all these exposures, right? You're next to the other EV. You're next to the other chargers. That Amazon Fresh in Sevens area, there's literally 2 energy storage systems just down from there, right? So did they take heat? It just turns into a long-standing incident. So we talk about the smoke. It's nasty smoke, right? There's a report that just came out from UL. Combustion engine vehicles, it's bad smoke. But electric vehicles, you're getting a lot of heavy metals depending upon what the battery technology is in there. So for you companies out there, you got to be wearing your air all the time when you're dealing with these things, when you're close to them. Sacramento last spring, 4 firefighters hurt while the tow truck's loading it up in a neighborhood because the smoke wafted towards them and they inhaled some and they basically are off the floor. So I can't talk about that enough because we don't know when these battery packs, the Rockville incident, I don't know how that battery pack didn't become involved, right? Because that was a lot of fire in the trunk area, right around there. So it took a thermal insult, but it kind of goes to show you that the manufacturers are doing their due diligence also with how they're designing these things. And it didn't cause an issue. I don't know how, it didn't. But you have to be ready for it. If there's any heat exposure to these battery packs, you just really have to be careful about it and dealing with them. We talk about, we were trying to set something up next to the academy here at the school board food place. They have a parking garage where we could figure out the best way to get a vehicle in and out of a garage after the incident, right? So kind of going back a little bit, call for hazmat, right? The hazmat officers, they are well trained. We have an SOG that we follow when it comes to anything battery. They can be your SMEs. Getting those emergency response guides, we have access to them. You all have access to them. Somebody needs to look at that. It might not be the first engine in on a parking garage auto fire, right? But at some point, the manufacturers kind of have what you should be looking for. So that's what we're looking at. And then we get to the point where the fire's out. We're removing the smoke. Our standard practice right now is no fire activity, no thermal runaway activity for 45 minutes. So we just want to keep things cool. That is obviously fire water that is cooling the battery pack if we think it's involved. We're using our thermal imager. Metering may or may not. One thing that they're finding is carbon monoxide is a telltale sign that something's going on with the battery. But if there's a lot of smoke around, you're just not going to be in a good position to use a meter, right? It's just going to be a bad environment anyway. So we're just keeping them cool. We get to that 45-minute mark. Hey, nothing's happened. Hopefully we don't have the Sacramento incident, and we can get it out. So how do you do that, right? At one point in time, at least the county-owned garages, their towing contractor had a smaller lift tow truck that could get into all but 2 of them. So maybe that's an option, right? But how do you protect that person from if something does go bad? For the Rockville incident, they were able to use a tow truck. They dollied it. They brought it down. There was 0 incidents. There was a couple other things going on at that time because the ATF was involved with that call specifically, just from the arson impacts to Tesla and everything. So they wanted to make sure nothing was going on. So we had extra time where nothing happened. I think it was like 2 hours plus before they actually got the vehicle out. And they just dollied it over to the yard with a fire engine behind it in case something happened. But what if the tow truck can't get in there? I know downtown Bethesda has a couple of them probably, right? So that's where your heavy rescue squads, maybe Tech Rescue. We've talked about as the hazmat team, we recommend at least doing a consult with Tech Rescue to go up or down through a garage on dollies because, yeah, you can throw it on dollies, but what kind of control do you have? So now you've just taken this very basic EV car fire and turned it into a long-term incident or a longer-term incident to try to figure out some of the rigging aspects of how do I get it out safely. Everybody, in my opinion, if you're doing that operation, everybody should be in gear, breathing air in case something happens, right? I think it's the worst case scenario if you're messing around with that. And again, Sacramento happens. Now you're inside a garage. One thing that has changed here very recently, and you're probably going to see it come out with the new UL flow chart for EV fires, we're not throwing a blanket inside of an enclosed structure, right? They had a couple incidents. Best case scenario is it's out on middle of nowhere road in 13, 14, Fours area, and we can just let it burn. But we know that's not the case in the garage. We don't want the infrastructure damage, the smoke migration, all the things that go with that. So a blanket's not an option just because of the potential deflagration that comes with it. So we're just keeping it cool and kind of coming up with a plan. I'm not saying there's one plan to get it out, but you got to have those conversations. The incident commander, all you command officers out there, have a conversation with the engine and truck officers that are down there working it for you, the hazmat officer from the battery aspect, and then a squad officer at a minimum. Figure it out. How are you going to get this thing up or down however many levels, right? If that thing was 5 floors down and you got to bring it up 5 floors just to get it out on the St. Elmo Avenue, how do you do that? How does that look? If the tow truck's not available, or if something happens when the tow truck's doing its thing, now what? So it's kind of complicated. There's no easy fix. I would say that, yeah, it's our job to make sure it's as safe as possible. From the hazmat world, we also are handing it back over to a responsible party, right? So ultimately, that Rockville garage, Tesla's leasing 3 floors there, which leads to a whole bunch of other questions that on the code side. But we can hand it back to them and they can kind of figure it out also. And we got to have those conversations. That's where the hazmat officers come in, the incident commander having a conversation with who the responsible party is. So there's a whole bunch of things to look at when you go to, and then last but not least, back to the energy storage system. Like if there's a battery energy storage system there and it's heat affected, that's a long-term incident where specialists are coming in to basically evaluate and pull that thing apart. Maybe the fire department's involved, maybe it's not. I would say that we would probably get away from it, but as soon as it goes into a thermal runaway event again, now we're back there and maybe we're providing some fire watch capabilities while the operation happens. The Surprise, Arizona incident where that hurt those firefighters, it took them 2 months to take that thing apart. So like, what's the fire? We haven't dealt with those, but it's questions that need to be asked. It's ultimately on them, but and then just the EV side, right? figuring out if let's say the battery pack is involved. You get down there, you put it out, and a bunch of batteries just are laying on the ground, right? So we can pull the car out, maybe nothing happens, but we still have to account for all those batteries, the cells, right? So hazmat's involved. We're probably bringing MDE in, the responsible party, maybe their cleanup contractor, right? Like, we have to account for thousands of cells that may or may not still have energy in them and are still a hazard, right? And again, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but all it takes is one, and somebody's sucking it down through inhalation, and then you're kind of off the floor for hopefully just a little while, but could be career ending.
So you talk about these events, and we're going to be there for a while, right? This is the type of stuff that keeps me up at night. I'm trying to go to sleep at work, and I can't because I what if every scenario to death, right? So you get a 5th floor below grade fire. You don't know what type of vehicle it is, so you're breathing air the whole way down to find this. Then you're breathing air as you're going in to find the vehicle that's on fire. Now you're putting the fire out. How much air do you actually have, right?
When was the last time you did the Metro swap?
And then we're going to do a hot swap in the stairwell if the stairwell, because we're opening that door to get into this garage, so now the stairwell is compromised, so I have no area of refuge that I can swap cylinders without doing a hot swap. So how often are we actually practicing this hot swap with cylinders? How many people have not done it before? Our air trucks.
Is the first two truck bringing a rip pack, right? Like a metro operation.
Right.
Almost. So somebody brought that up in relation to the standpipes,
Yeah.
but is that a consideration too, right?
Yep, we can transfill, but how many times can you transfill? Once?
Yeah.
If there's a couple of people working? Do we have air carts anymore? Can we bring those down? Do we have a reel that's long enough on our air truck that actually transfills to our units? I don't even know if that's a thing on our trucks right now. That's nightmare fuel, right? And then you're talking about we have to be there for 45 minutes with no fire and no more smoke production. How many companies are you going to have to be rotating through if they've got a 10-minute work cycle before they have to come back out and go all the way, hike back 5 stories back up to get more air? It's a nightmare.
Yeah, and I think it all starts though at the beginning, right? Setting ourselves up for success. We're taking that time, right? So hopefully you know the building, doing the basics, right? Having the truck drivers, making it a priority for them to pressurize the stairwells, right? Obviously, depending on the fixed building systems, we know we could sometimes do more harm if it's a pressurized stairwell, right? But making sure that our attack stairwell is pressurized, right? Whether it's a building system or a combination of that and our fans, maybe bringing fans down stories, right? We know, we say at high rises, right, 9th floor and above, or we want to bring fans up, but what if it's down, right? Are we bringing some fans down lower to actually pressurize that door that we have open to make entry to keep that stairwell tenable, staging cylinders, things like that. We talk about removing some command officer considerations, maybe like, are we going to need to place multiple hand lines in service, along the path of travel if we are bringing that vehicle out? Another consideration. We talked about keeping water on that battery pack, right? We know battery packs are underneath, for the most part. That transformer nozzle, are you familiar with it?
So I actually wanted to hit that real quick.
Go ahead, yeah.
Can we bring the Rockville car fire, EV fire back up on the screen? So one thing that we know of, these EVs are usually, at least in the passenger car world, are low to the ground. So yes, we have the transformer nozzle. It's keeping things cool, right? That's the goal, is to keep the battery pack cool so it doesn't go into a thermal event. But you can see that back wheel there, like, it has dropped down. So now what? All right, so this is where your truck company, your rescue truck or your heavy rescue squad, may be in there assisting just to get it up in the air a little bit. Maybe a step chock does it. Maybe it needs to be a little more technical than that, just to get water on the battery pack to keep it cool. Like, that's the ultimate goal if the battery pack's involved going on. Again, I think Rockville lucked out that the battery didn't do anything, and it shows that the manufacturers are doing their due diligence, but it's not always going to be the case, and having a plant working through those. The squads, right? When was the last time you did a lifting operation breathing air? I don't know. So, but it's something to consider.
Right, and you mentioned that, Rockville lucked out, absolutely, especially considering that the vehicle was isolated, right? You have one car involved. How does this conversation change when you have vehicles parked inches away from each other and you have the same incident that Captain Smith had in Six's area, except now you have 3 cars to deal with, right? So it's a very different conversation
And they're all EVs.
Right, and it's evolving just simply just on the fact that that fire can spread. If you don't get control quick enough, if you have an unsprinklered fire like we had in Rockville, this would have been a very different incident had the battery been involved and had there been Teslas parked on either side of this Tesla as well. Right, this could very easily have been an out of control type incident where you might lose the whole parking garage or the whole floor at least.
And just something to consider, we're just talking EVs and hybrid electric vehicles, right? There's other alternative fuels out there. So what happens when
Hydrogen or CNG.
yeah, the
or-
CNG cars parked there because they just had to be there for the day, right? You're never going to know that
Nope.
until you're down there dealing with it. There's just zero way to know that in depth unless the 911 caller tells you,
Right.
which is lucky some days, or you just happen to come across it, right? Like you get down there and we know battery fires, right? Like they jet out. We know that we talk about the smoke, right? Well, what if it's just the products from thermal runaway? It's a flammable vapor cloud, basically. There's mixed in with the smoke, right? Like there's all these other things that go with it that you may have to account for. And technology's fast in the world today, so there's not always a good, easy answer, and it's left up to the fire department to kind of figure things out. So ultimately, put the fire out, at least in the EV world. If you do encounter another alternative fuel vehicle, usually we would let them just kind of do their thing, vent, but you got to account for that, right? Like if it's sitting next to the stairwell and throwing natural gas into a stairwell going up into the residential commercial area, that's a nightmare.
Yeah. Scary.
A couple other points that were brought up in the chat related to like the basic things. We got the smoke curtains now. Remembering that's an option, right? Or it's I don't even want to say an option, right? That should be standard practice. Going below grade, just like going above grade, right? To help keep the integrity of the stairwells or whatever compartment the fire's in. And then also leveraging ECC's resources, right? To get any of that specialty equipment there, their contacts with. We need dollies, we need that tow truck that can fit in the parking garage, whatever. They should know the people to call to hopefully get that process started. So, couple other so I think we hit the EVs pretty good. Again, not one smoking gun, no pun intended, right, for how we're gonna
put
how
the
we're gonna
fire
attack
out.
that. But that's it for initial chief officers or company officers. Worry about suppressing the
Put
fire.
the fire out, wear your air, come up with a ventilation plan, and kind of just handle the other hazards as they present themselves. And I'll tell you, just work with the hazmat officers, right? Like hazmat team, we've kind of pushed, knowing that. I know Captain Bernie has everybody going over to Tesla now. That's a really good thing. They have put together a first responder presentation. It's brief. It's not the end all be all, right? Like again, there's some proprietary stuff that they'll never be front facing with, but it's a good start. And a lot of places have those emergency response guys and tactics to do things.
Cool. So thank you for like I said, the EV came up a lot, so I definitely wanted to touch on that. So just a couple other topics. One that should be pretty quick, but just pay attention to what's going on around you. Mike McCorney sent some stuff over to me. He's also an engineer that does that work on the side about automated parking systems and the potential for those to come down the pipe. I think there's a building in the works. Forget exactly where it is. I think it's in Six's area somewhere where they're talking about integrating that.
Edgemore and Woodmont.
Yeah, there you go. So there's a blueprint of that up there, like roughly where it would go. And I don't know if they have the infographic for that. I think I put that in the media of what that would look like. There's like a brochure almost. But just so you know, they're like lift systems basically that could go inside of these garages and basically stack these cars on top of one another. It's another thing for nightmare fuel, right? When you get 3 cars stacked on top of one another now in a parking structure on fire.
I think the best place to see one is the Carvana that you can see from 270. Is that 3's area or 32's area?
32.
Yeah, right off 270. And the important thing to note about these, just like Carvana, is that these spaces in the building are not meant to be occupied by the public or anybody. The only portions of these systems that are basically where you release your vehicle to the automated parking system. When you get out and let the automated parking system take your vehicle and put it wherever it goes, beyond that, it's not permissible for public entry. And for fire department entry, we should be very, very careful. Luckily, the IBC, in modern edition of the IBC, have codified new requirements for these systems, fire department access doors, smoke removal systems for the vehicle bays, and things like this, all in efforts to make our access and safety better. doesn't mean it's still an easy incident, right? You're going to a space that's not meant to be occupied by humans. What does that mean for our operations? And I think in the near future, we're going to see more and more of these, certainly.
Yeah. So be aware of what's going on, right? Try to do their best to become familiar with them and know the hazards. Search came up a lot, or we talked a little bit about that, search considerations. So I know you talked about getting some different search ropes, where we don't have one, I would say, unified large area search procedure in the county. And I kind of get that, right? There's not a one size fits all thing, but just want to talk a little bit about what your intentions are as far as orientation and considerations for searching these parking garages. I think it needs to be more at the forefront. Me now, as a new incident commander, even the company officers to prompt us. Again, we're thinking auto fire, parking garage. Just it should be at the forefront of our mind, but I don't think it always is. I'm speaking for myself. I don't know that it would be, but it needs to be, right? A huge consideration. These regular parking garages are ordinarily occupied by people coming and going all day long. So what are your thoughts on as far as search priorities and kind of how you're going to go about that in the future?
So I did make mention on this fire a couple of times on the radio, hey, we need to get companies searching. We have 5 stories below us, 0 visibility. We need to search, we need to search, we need to search. There's a lot of other stuff going on. It took a little while to get that started. I don't know what the right answer is or the best answer is. For me, on that incident, I was able to clear that whole first floor using my thermal imager, but you have to get in between every car. They're not just going to be in the middle, laying on the ground waving to you, so you have to get in between every car at a minimum. I don't know that we're going to necessarily be able to search inside cars, but it's possible that people are in their car, had just pulled into the garage, and then they saw the smoke and they stayed in their car hoping that they would be safe. Ultimately, I think you're going to have to do that before you clear the incident, right? I think every vehicle is going to need to be looked in. The garage is just going to be a primary. There's going to be a secondary. You think about how cold it's been outside recently, right? It didn't get above freezing for a couple of weeks. So families with little kids oftentimes will go down to the garage and they'll ride their bicycles and they'll play with toys and they'll get some activity out. I think we were very lucky on this call that there wasn't anybody in that garage that we found after the fact. So I don't know what the answer is. I think it depends on the size of the garage, right? You get some of these garages that are a full city block below ground. I don't know how you clear that in a 0 visibility environment, right? There's not enough search rope in the world to do that.
How long did the secondary take? Do you recall?
We were there for a couple of hours. I think it probably was.
And was that communicated pretty well? Like, look, secondary, we have to check each floor, and to me, you should be getting eyes in every vehicle that you can, just to account for that secondary search piece that
I don't know
you
that.
don't think of on an auto fire necessarily.
I don't know that that was discussed, and I don't want to speak for
that's
Chief
fine.
first. I'm not sure what his game plan was. I know that it got done, but I don't know the timing of it. But yeah, it's just something that people don't think about because we don't run them very often. But when we do, these things are bad, and they're going to be time consuming, and you have to get inside every vehicle, at least put eyes inside of every vehicle and every ancillary room, every stairwell, right? What if there's a maintenance guy working on the sprinkler system or
Has his
something
office
else,
in the
right? Exactly. Office in the basement. It's
Or do you have transient occupants that sleep in the
Yeah.
parking garage, right, when it's cold out, and you see it all over?
Yeah, like utilizing engine companies to do searches, right? We just need
Yeah.
manpower at a certain point, right? There
Yeah.
wasn't much of a fire problem in this case, so you handled it with your engine company, right? Could we release some of those other engine companies to start the searches? And delineating floors becomes a huge problem in parking garages, right? Because of the nature of the ramp system, right? Where does level 0 start and end versus where does level 1 pick up, right? You basically have, it's kind of the equivalent of like a split foyer almost, right? When you come out into a floor, you have a ramp going up and a ramp going down if you're in the middle of the garage, right? So it's not as easy as saying truck 6, you search floor 0, rescue squad, 741, you're going to search G1 and so on, because like where does that start and end, right? So good communication, right? Making sure we cover all these areas and maintaining that orientation, like you said, because you're doing that switchback, right? Going up or down, back and forth, it's very easy to get turned around and be like, hey, which way am I facing now, right? Something that's simple as you're in a parking garage, you can get lost. So, yeah, I don't think there's one answer. I'm going to put you on the spot, but all good things to talk about and consider.
I think especially in a smoke-filled environment, you've got to have crews on a tagline of some type. It's just so easy to get turned around inside of these garages, and if you do, you're done.
Yeah, don't become complacent, right? Just because you think, oh, it's an auto fire, it's a parking garage, I'll be able to see. Right?
Yeah.
It's not that simple. Chris, do you, anything as far as the ventilation, so specifically related to this one, that you think like technique-wise or anything for us to consider is knowing what you know about smoke movement and everything, that we could do better or differently in these underground parking garages to maybe more efficiently or effectively ventilate them?
Right, like Captain Smith noted on their incident, the ventilation system wasn't working from the start, and I think that obviously negatively affected their operations because they didn't get the benefit of a head start on this ventilation from the building ventilation itself. I think pre-planning is good, making sure you're familiar with, if you have an enclosed parking garage in your first due, making sure you're familiar with where are the fans located so that when this incident occurs, I can find those fans, verify that they're operating, or if they're not, trying to go from, usually have a handoff auto switch, trying to go from auto to on to see if it'll operate. If it won't operate in on or hand mode, then maybe there's something wrong with the fans, and then you can take the next step if you can to try to troubleshoot that. But with just our own fans that we carry on the apparatus, it is extremely difficult to ventilate these buildings. In a similar incident that we had in parking garage B in Rockville, it wasn't an auto, it was just like recycling materials, plastics that burned on the first story below grade. We did have a sprinkler activation, but as soon as that sprinkler activated, visibility goes near zero because all that steam expansion is mixing with the smoke and you're just spreading it throughout the garage. It's not hot and buoyant anymore. It's not rising and lifting out of the garage. Instead, it's doing the opposite. It's sinking deeper and deeper into the garage, even below levels to where your incident originated. So now you have, instead of an incident on one floor, you have an incident on 5 floors or more. Yeah, I think it is difficult. I don't think there's a silver bullet for this type of issue either. I wish that we had a large ventilation utility type vehicle. I think that could afford some benefit, but even then you need to have the ability to pressurize an orifice or an opening of the parking garage that'll be valuable to you, and that's not always guaranteed either. A lot of times we have garages, even above grade garages, that are enveloped or enclosed in donut style construction. Ventilation is not easy. Even though you do have what is technically an open parking garage per the code, these garages are still limited in their ventilation abilities because 10 feet away from the openings of the garage,
Surrounded.
you're surrounded by the residential portion of the building, and your visibility is less. The smoke doesn't evacuate itself as efficiently as would a standalone open parking garage where smoke can just relieve itself. Same is true for below grade parking levels, of course, where you have no openings and you're relying solely on the building ventilation.
Yeah, so I mean, at a certain point, you're fighting each other. You're fighting yourself, right? If you have these fans and exhaust throughout the parking garage, you're trying to pull smoke out that way. Smoke's kind of naturally ventilating out that open door, right? Well, what do? Do we pressurize the open door that smoke's coming out of to try to help those building fans and risk pushing the smoke into the rest of the structure? Do we, those mobile ventilation units, like you were saying, we have our mutual aid resources at least. We don't have our own. I think it was Chief Hine put in there the CFM of, I guess it was Loudon, it's like 380,000 CFM or something like that. It's gigantic
huge.
compared to one of our normal fire department fans, 8,000 CFM, right? I mean, it's crazy, right? The amount of difference, but you have to be able to do something with that air, right? So we can't just arbitrarily blow it into the front of the parking garage and hope it's going to clear the smoke. That's not always going to work.
I think what Captain Smith did on their incident with utilizing the building's ventilation system and troubleshooting it to make it work, I think that was the best option.
I appreciate you saying I did that, but I did not.
Yes, sorry, your crew. Yeah.
That was George Ketterman, not me.
Yeah.
To me, I think that's the best option because you're using that benefit of that volume, that abundance of CFM, but you had to make it work, right? And that can't be expected of everybody. We're not all HVAC techs. We're not all going to be able to repair a fan on scene, of course. But I think that yielded a great outcome.
Yeah. Also, like, I haven't seen it done often, but large-scale hydraulic ventilation, right, has been done before in like large warehouse-style structures with a portable master stream device with a fog tip. I mean, flowing 1,000 gallons a minute, a 30 or more degree fog, you're moving a lot of CFM. So if you need more of that smoke evacuation, it could be a consideration to use to help you remove smoke. So yeah, think outside the box and have a coordinated plan. I think is the key to that.
I think that, especially with underground and closed parking garages where you're limited on your openings to the volume of the garage, I agree. I think outside of the box. While I don't necessarily recommend pushing smoke up into the stairs and using them as smoke evacuation shafts, maybe the opposite. Maybe pressurizing the stairways, or if they're already pressurized by the building, then use that as your supply air, and then yeah, you could hydraulically ventilate with a blitz fire or something at the mouth of the garage, and then that way you have positive airflow.
Yeah.
And that's the issue that we see on these garages and ventilating is that, sure, we might have a great place for exhaust, but we don't have any way to get air in, and that's what we're struggling with. And without that air movement, we're not going to move the smoke like we want to.
Yeah, so if we can get fresh air from the outside into those
Right.
sterols, keep those sterols pressurized, yeah, have that flow go in the same direction, you're not fighting yourself.
Just don't flood the transformer room.
Yes, correct. We didn't do that, I don't think. All right, cool, good discussion. I guess, we're basically almost at that hour and a half mark already, so go around real quick and just see if anybody else has any big points to wrap up. Lieutenant Robinson, we'll start with you. Anything else you want to add, or?
No,
Yeah,
just
good.
like I said, learned a lot from the incident. Different priorities as far as life safety and doing the searches, which was something that we got to make sure that we put top of the list. When we got in there, we put the fire out, but I was worried about the high rise and, like you said, MEMA or whatever could be on the 5th floor below. So just learned a lot from it. As far as with the ventilation fans, everybody in different areas should be checking those, doing pre-plans, making sure that they work. And so if when we do have these incidents like this, that we could kind of,
Yeah, make it work.
make it work. That's it.
Gotcha, thank you. Captain Smith?
No problem.
So I think this incident went relatively well for what we had. We got lucky in a lot of ways, but it went well. One thing I did notice, once the fire was out, we were there for a long time removing smoke, and crews were not breathing air, and I don't understand why. Right? We know this shit is we know this stuff is causing cancer. Right, sorry, my bad. It's killing us, right? We had 46 guys in the last 48 months come down with cancer, and we're not breathing air, and I don't understand that, right? It's free. Breathe it. Why are we breathing in the smoke? You don't know what's in it. So
Yeah, everybody's accountable for it. We talked about it before in our cancer episode and everything else. Like me as the safety officer in that incident, I can't police every single person. Chief First is the incident commander, said it a couple times already, can't police every single person. You got to be responsible for yourself.
yeah, we just got to get out of that mindset of, I don't need this air. I'm cool. I'll breathe in this smoke. It's stupid. Don't be that guy.
Chief Browning?
I think it's been hit a couple times, but know your buildings, all right? Put the fire out, whether it's combustion or EV, just put it out and we'll figure out long term. And then breathe in air. Some big things.
Chris?
Yeah, I think a big takeaway is, while we're working to understand better our existing hazards as they present in the county, understand that also rapidly evolves and changes. We already saw Mike Picorni has showed us a new design for an automated vehicle parking retrieval system being designed in the county. On top of that, I've already seen some places in Six's area in underground parking garages where vehicle stackers are in place. And people in condos or apartments, they put these in, and technically per the building code, they're not adequately protected. They're supposed to have a increase in the sprinkler design density, or they're actually required to have sprinklers placed in between those vehicle tiers of the stackers. But guess what? You don't need a building permit to buy one of those and throw it in your garage. So a lot of times it doesn't happen. So recognize that even though it's a car fire, right? I mean, we run these all the time. It's not a big deal. But with the way modern vehicle hazards in the vehicles themselves and how we park them is rapidly changing, the codes can only catch up so fast. And so we're ultimately left, making up the difference and trying to fight the fire the best way we can and do the best we can with what we got.
Yeah, so you use good situational awareness
Yeah.
and try to be aware as much as possible. One question did come in, and I don't know if you know, Chris, is like fans aren't working in this case. If it's not a life safety code thing, right? If they're just part of normal building systems, is there any recourse to get stuff like that fixed? Would be like that, like be a building code thing that
Yeah.
we could?
That would be enforced through the building department,
Okay.
through DPS, namely, and the building codes enforcement side, because ultimately that falls in part of the building code requirement.
So if we happen to notice that, it's something we could always forward to the
Absolutely.
city codes or DPS for the
Right.
county.
I mean, if those fans aren't working, then there's probably a lot of carbon monoxide in that garage on a day-to-day basis, just from vehicles idling.
And I would say you could probably still do the normal fire code and they'll push it along.
Right.
Same department. So, cool. All right. Well, thank you guys very much for coming and taking your time today. I think that's a lot of really valuable topics. People learn from your specific incident, but then also, again, a lot of good discussion about, general fires and parking structures, and we've got a lot of good information on the EVs again. So thank you guys for joining us. Thank you everybody for watching. Again, if you didn't watch live, or if you watched on your own and your station didn't watch, try to put it up next shift to make sure everybody gets the information. As far as future episodes, we had a couple things in the works, so Chief Light will put that out as we get firm dates. So thanks everybody for joining us, and have a good rest of your day.